and I will start to see and feel and experience and operate within my circumstances as I walk each day with my lens forever changed. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that I woke up so much lighter this morning. I felt like it didn't matter that my circumstances hadn't changed. It didn't matter that nothing really physically in the manifested world had changed for me, but I changed. I felt different. I felt better. I felt hope. I felt a renewed sense of adventure. I felt like, you know what? Huh, it's going to be okay.
Hello, my loves. This is Johanna Burkhardt. I am a multidimensional channel, teacher, healer, and author. And I am obsessed with all things metaphysical, esoteric, galactic, and of course, the healing journey. And I'm here to share my stories, my wisdom, and my teachings about being human in the illusion that we call reality. Welcome to Cosmic Blonde.
Hello, my loves. Well, it has been a few days as I record this since my ego death, and there has been massive transformation since, and I kind of want to talk about it. And so that's what we're going to do today. I couldn't sleep last night. Very normal for me. It's, today, as I record this, is a full moon. And so the energy has been crazy. And as I mentioned several times, I just don't sleep that much anymore anyway. But I had this intense pain between my shoulder and my elbow on both arms late last night. And I started to have clarity happening as to what I had been holding on to and what has been holding me back. And something that I don't think I mentioned in the ego death episode is that when we have an ego death, it is the ego death is of the protector personality. And the protector personality protects the inner child that was wounded. And when we have what we call a fragment or a part of ourself that is created, right, an aspect of ourself, it's always two. When we have a split, there's always two aspects always that are created. One is the protector personality, and one is the inner child that was wounded, because there has to be a part of us that steps in front of that wounded child to protect us from experiencing that pain or that trauma that we did, to help us feel safe existing and moving forward in life, especially if we're in the same environment, for a long period of time where the incident or the trauma occurred. So after I had this ego death, as I mentioned in the last episode, I began to fast. And the fast is important because it allows for, as I mentioned, the emotional digestion cycle to happen and for that energy to be fully broken down and digested. And as it opens up the pathway for that inner child to be seen, felt, heard, and more importantly, for us to understand why we were repressing and holding on to this energy in the way that we were. Because it's weird to think about it this way. I don't know, maybe it isn't for you, but it is for me. But when we are repressing or suppressing, we're actually holding on to something because we are afraid, or maybe our ego is afraid of who we will be without it. Because again, the mind can't conceive what it will gain in the letting go. It can only conceive what it's losing. And the ego mind does not like an uncertainty. It likes certainty because its job, the ego's job, is to keep us safe. The ego is not a bad thing. It is actually there to keep us safe. So as we allow the ego death to fully occur and the breakdown, right? After that to happen, the energy to break down completely. Again, this is when clarity usually comes in and we're able to truly see, feel, hear, understand why we were repressing in the first place. And this has to happen for integration to take place, because we have to, again, integration is simple. It's just a release of judgment. So anyway, last night I'm laying there, I'm really struggling to sleep, and I was fighting with it a little bit, and I just kept saying to myself over and over again in my head as I breathed, because I was feeling super anxious. I was feeling the fight. I was feeling this energy, and I just had to continuously let it break down, right? I was literally feeling it in my upper arms, and I just kept putting my hands on my heart and on my body and just saying, um, I let go. I let go. I let go of the version of me that's in survival. I let go of the version of me that's in survival. We are safe. We are safe. And I just kept breathing and being like, this is what it is. I accept this. I'm here. It's okay. I don't like it, but that's okay. And, because acceptance is not agreement, we don't have to like what the fuck's happening. So, nevertheless, eventually I fell asleep for a while. I got about, I don't know, 3.5, 4 hours of sleep. And I woke up this morning and I was like, oh my God, I get it now. So, when I was young, even though my mom left at 3, from a child up until, I don't know, 9, 10, probably around 10, I had a pretty good life. Yes, my mother abandoned me. Yes, it was just me and my father. Yes, I stepped into that kind of woman of the house role at a very super young age and really had this subconscious knowing that I needed to take care of myself, and kind of immediately took on that role of taking care of myself and being my own mother. And that had its own emotional implications, obviously on my development and my wounds. But aside from that, like my dad was amazing. And my time with my dad was amazing. It was completely uncertain, but it never felt uncertain. It felt adventurous. And that's the higher expression, or the loving expression of uncertainty, is adventure. The fearful side of adventure is uncertainty, and the loving side is it's an adventure. And honestly, that's why our souls came here, for the adventure, for the not knowing. Like, let's go and let's see what happens, and let's have a good time and on the process. The guides often refer to this as like our road trips. And we oftentimes, when we go on a road trip, we might have a destination in mind, but we don't know what we're going to experience along the way. And we're often excited to know to figure out what we're going to experience on the way. We're kind of excited. Ooh, I wonder what we're going to see. I wonder who we're going to meet. I wonder what kind of food we're going to eat. All of those things. We don't always have to know, and we're not fearful of it, but we're excited about it. And that's how they see the human journey and this adventure, and why the journey is the most magical part of this. And so as a child, my dad would wake me up at like 3 a.m. and he would be like, pack a bag, we're going somewhere, we're going on an adventure. Half the time, probably more than half the time, I had no clue where we were going, what we were doing. We would go on road trips. We took a road trip one time, and we went through Arizona and Utah, Colorado, and ended up in Wyoming. And I remember as a kid, I had this red, it looked like a briefcase, but it was plastic, and it was a Lego case. There was not Legos in it. There was Barbies. And I remember sitting in the front seat. My dad had a blue 4Runner, and I would sit in the front seat and I would be playing with my Barbies, and I'd be looking out the window at the scenery, the landscape of Utah, the Grand Canyon, the mountains of Colorado. And we drove through some treacherous conditions. There's this story, and I remember it a little bit, but my dad told this story. He was really good at telling the same stories over and over again. But this story he told so much that it's like ingrained in me. But we were I think at this point, I don't know if we were on our way to Wyoming, and that's where my grandpa was living at the time, or if we were coming back from Wyoming. I don't think it really matters. But the if you ever driven through Wyoming in the winter, I think it's Highway 80 is treacherous when the drift, the wind, the conditions are wildly unsafe to where you often have to have chains or they shut the highway down completely. When my dad was, he was driving a 4Runner, it had four-wheel drive, and he had sand tires on it because I grew up going to the dunes, the sand dunes in San Diego. So we were always imperial sand dunes. We were always out in the desert in the dirt or off-roading in the mountains. And so he had off-road tires on that were meant for those conditions. It wasn't meant for snow. It definitely wasn't meant for ice. But we were surrounded by big, 18-wheeler truck drivers. And I don't know what happened to do it, but we were driving, he ended up going sideways. And to give you the best visual that I can, the 18-wheeler is driving down the highway and we are perpendicular, like we're moving, we're sliding down the highway sideways where my dad and I, the front of the 4Runner is facing the passenger or the driver's side door of the 18. We're looking at him and he's looking at us, and we're both still moving forward, but we're just sliding. And he was able to get control of it and get back going straight. But he always tells this story because he said he was scared shitless. He's like, I was shitting bricks. And Johanna is thinking we're having a great time like we did in the sand dunes and is like, wow, this is a great time. This is fun. And he's losing his shit and he's holding it. Obviously, I didn't know he's losing his shit because I didn't feel that. But here I was just having a grand old time thinking we're just having a good time. I wasn't scared at all. And he tells that story so much. And it just makes me smile and laugh. But these are the kinds of things. Like I remember going off-roading um, behind the Santee dump, and probably nobody's going to know where Santee is, but it's a town in the East County of San Diego. And back in the day, you used to be able to go behind um, the dump and off-road. And I remember it being like, I don't know, the middle, like it was pitch black. So it's 2, 3 in the morning. And I'm passed out. He's four-bying and I could sleep through anything. I would sleep through, we used to go to the NASCAR races and the dirt tracks, and I could sleep through just about anything as a kid. Nothing fazed me, nothing bothered me because I trusted and I felt so safe with my dad. So anyway, I remember him waking me up in the truck when he was off-roading or buying, and there was this mama deer and this baby deer sitting in the pathway. And I don't know if they were like kind of deer caught in headlights type of thing, but they didn't move. They were frozen and they didn't get up. They were literally laying down in the middle of this 4 by trail. And he's like, Joe, Joe, because that's what he called me. That was my nickname, was Joe or Jojo. And he woke me up and we just sat there, which it felt like forever. It was probably like 2 minutes, 3 minutes max. It felt like time froze. And we just sat there and stared at these deer. And we're just in total awe of the miracle and the beauty of them. And to this day, I still get deer that come up to me, and I have a very weird connection with deer. But anyway, these are the kinds of things. Like we were always going on these magical, fun adventures. And I remember it being so much fun. And even stories when my mom and dad were together, when I was really little, of them taking me to the desert, and setting me down and them telling me stories how they setting me down in the dirt. Here I am, probably 1.5, 2, and they sit me down in the sand and turn on all the lanterns just to see that I'm surrounded by scorpions, or the story about when my mom put me on the front of her three-wheeler and, her 250R, which if you are someone who knows anything about sand vehicles or ATVs, 250Rs, that was a big deal back then. And her rolling her bike with me on it. No one wearing helmets, no one wearing gear. Back in the day, they rode in shorts and flip-flops. That's how it was in the 70s and 80s. And just telling me all these stories and river trips and just adventure and fun. And even after the trauma that I went through with my stepmom, around 9, 10, when my dad brought this other woman in, and that's when all the abuse started and everything. Once that passed, and I was in my early 20s, and that she was long gone, and my dad and I had mended our relationship, that came back. And I spent all of my 20s and a good part, and at least the first half of my 30s having those adventures still with my dad and whoever I was dating or married to at the time, where we would go to the desert and we would go to the river and we would have a blast and we would take these road trips and we would go to Lake Powell and we would do all of these things. Those two times of my life were the only times I remember having fun, loving life, even though I had major challenges during those times. And it was never easy. I still had trauma. I still had challenges. I still had things that were not going great in my life. But I still remember how much fun I had and how much easier it made it for me to go through those experiences because there was an area of my life where I was having a good time and where I was having fun. So fast forward, I leave San Diego in 2013. I moved to North Carolina. I'm trying to, at this point, run away from my dad because I've been enabling him. And the breakdown of everything begins. I lose my grandma, who was like my mom. I lose my dad. I'm in a state and where I don't have any of those things. I no longer have my friends. I'm no longer having fun. I'm married to a man who doesn't even like to camp or be outdoors or know anything about off-roading or trucks or anything of those natures. And I go through my awakening and I go through all of these things and I lose myself completely. And I feel like I repressed those versions of me and I became somebody that I thought I needed to be for where I was, what I was going through. When you go through an awakening, people often don't, not everybody has this experience, but for me, I didn't know who I was anymore. I felt ashamed to be around my friends or even talk to my friends, my OG friends that were in San Diego. And I even went as far as removing majority of them from my social media so they wouldn't even see what I was going through. Because there was a level of shame that was coming up because I was like, this isn't who you are. And yet this is what I was doing. But it was who I am. It is who I am. When we wake up and we become more self-aware, this is when we take the journey of really figuring out who our authentic self is, when we're allowing more of our higher self to come in and our soul to lead. It's not that those aspects of us that we once were all goes away. And I think that's the important thing that I, at some level, wasn't remembering because I was repressing. And I thought by repressing, I was holding on to that. And we can actually do this, and I have done this even with trauma memories. Sometimes we hold on or repress out of fear that we will forget. And if we forget, we will allow ourselves to be hurt again. And other times we repress, which is also again holding on to the good memories because we will forget and we won't have those anymore, or we won't be able to call them in. And so I had this insane clarity as to why I'm so attached to a particular person, why I'm always called back and feel so called back to San Diego, and to wanting to be with my OG friends and wanting to be in a relationship with someone who did all of the same things that my dad did, and why I'm drawn to that type of person anyway, someone who goes to those places and does those types of activities. I'm like, why am I holding on to this man? Why am I holding on to this location? Why can't I let this go? Why is this happening? And I didn't understand until this morning. Again, it's when that protector personality was gone and I was able to see these inner children so clearly. Those parts of myself were the parts of myself that had fun. And I have spent the last 10 years of my life not having any fun. It's not that I haven't had fun, but I haven't had the fun in the way that I've been craving. I haven't had the ability or was in the space to do the things that lit me up, that I enjoyed. And there are things that I will discover and find out about myself that will be fun that aren't those things, right? But I think a part of me was afraid of losing that. And so I was holding on to it so hard. And in the holding on to it, I was actually blocking myself from having it and experiencing it. And that's a key that I really want to drive home right now is that when we repress, we are holding on. And we know that when we hold on, we essentially create a block. And so what I did this morning was, as I sat and I listened to those inner children. I saw them. I held them. I talked to them. And I let them know that by me letting them go, I'm allowing them into me. I was keeping them separate from me when I was holding on to them. When we're holding on and repressing, we're separating them. We're saying, we have to keep you over here. We have to keep you over here. And why we think by doing that, that we're focusing on that, that we're actually going to be able to recreate that or call that in or have that experience again, because we're so desperate to have that feeling and we have such a strong desire, it's actually creating a block. And so what I said to my inner children was, by letting go of you, I'm letting you into me. And I will actually be closer to you by doing so. You will become a part of me. You will become the foundation of me. And we will actually manifest these fun experiences, this feeling of the sense of adventure instead of the fear of uncertainty even faster because we manifest who we are, not what we desire. So by letting go of what I was holding on to and allowing it into me and to integrate deep into my bones, it was becoming a part of me. So the pain and the trauma and the lessons that I experienced will become wisdom. And that sense of adventure, that sense of living life to the fullest and being excited about not knowing what the fuck is next, that energy will return to me as a part of who I am, how I operate on an everyday basis. And I will begin to call in more and more experiences because I am it. I mean, it's just it's mind-blowing. We often don't think that these small moments like this, these small moments are going to be super impactful. But if we look at the understanding of the butterfly effect and we understand the power of the butterfly, There's this saying that the flapping of the wings of a butterfly can be felt on the other side of the world. And there's this idea taken from physics that the small actions are capable of generating large changes, positive or not, right? So the simplest thing is the flapping of the butterfly's wings. It's so small, and we think that's so trivial, but it actually has a huge impact on the world. And so these little small shifts in us about realizing that what we've been doing, what we've been holding on to is because we're afraid that we won't have those experiences again, is actually the thing that is limiting us the most. And that when we just let go of that and allow it to come into us, we become that change. This is literally what it means to become that in which you seek. I have been seeking a sense of adventure. I have been seeking that version of me again that was fun and lighthearted and didn't take everything so seriously and just let go. And listen, if you've been following me over the last few years, you have seen a transformation. I am so much more comfortable in my body. I could give two shits 95% of the time about what anybody thinks of me. And I just do what I want and feel and record reels and say what I want and experience what I want, even if it looks crazy to everybody else, right? So I have already been on that path, but I had been noticing that I was chasing that sense of adventure. I was chasing that sense of fun through my nomad, through my road tripping, through this relationship I had with this man that did similar things and really reminded me of how I felt when I was with my dad and my friends and had the most fun time of my life. So I was chasing a feeling. Sometimes we think we're chasing safety or we're chasing experience, but in the safety, in the experience, there's a feeling that arises. And so we're always really chasing a feeling. And so by repressing these versions of me and protecting myself from these versions of me out of fear that I would forget these experiences or that I would never have this was actually blocking me from having it. And so yesterday, having that clarity with the ego personality dead and gone and broken down, I was able to this morning open my heart, have this inner child communication, and let them in and say, guess what? Not only will I be closer to you, but that energy that we've been chasing, you're the energy I've been chasing. And by letting you into my heart, I'm going to start to feel that again, period. It may not happen overnight, but that's going to begin to integrate. And how that works is as I release judgment of letting go of those things, right? By letting go, I'm releasing judgment. That energy starts to break down and it starts to settle into my tissue, into my bones, into my bone marrow, and it becomes the foundation. It integrates back into the whole of who I am. And I will start to see and feel and experience and operate within my circumstances as I walk each day with my lens forever changed. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that I woke up so much lighter this morning. I felt like it didn't matter that my circumstances hadn't changed. It didn't matter that nothing really physically in the manifested world had changed for me, but I changed. I felt different. I felt better. I felt hope. I felt a renewed sense of adventure. I felt like, you know what? Huh, it's going to be okay because my perception had completely changed. And so while I have that today because it's fresh and new, there has to be some settling, right? The settling will continue, but I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this experience. It is now something that's becoming wisdom and something that I will always come back to. On this journey, anybody who says they're fully enlightened and doesn't struggle with the human experience is not somebody that you should look up to. You just shouldn't. And that's why I pride myself on being completely transparent because that is part of our growth and our self-awareness. So to say that I'm never going to have a moment where I struggle and forget is asinine. It's going to happen, but it will give me an opportunity to recall that wisdom and reinforce it and deepen it and build more trust and more faith and more belief in myself and really strengthen and expand that feeling in which I have been seeking, that I now know lives inside of me. It's not something that I'm keeping separate from me. And I could not wait. I could not wait to share this with you because what I am sharing with you in my vulnerability, in my transparency of these past few episodes, of my patterns, of my ego death, of the integration, is showing you the process in which I go through and the good, bad, and the funky and the crazy. Like I'm laying it all out there because it doesn't always feel worth it when we're in it and we're on the struggle bus and we're in these heavy, dense emotions. But when you can hear somebody else talk about how it feels and how they navigated through it and they're raw about it, it makes it a little bit easier for someone else to go through because they can say, "Oh, I know I'm going to get through this." Because if you knew you were going to make it through, if you knew, and I'm going to leave you with this question that I want you to ask yourself, whatever it is that you're struggling with, whatever it is that you're going through. And I literally just before I started recording this podcast, had a session with somebody, and this question came through for them too. If you knew without a doubt that you were going to make it through whatever it is that you're going through, how do you want to look back and tell the story of how you walked it? Did you trust? Did you have faith? Did you surrender and accept where you were, even though you didn't like it? Or did you fight with it? Did you constantly try to fix it and control it? And I can tell you, I've done both. I've done both because there is a multitude of things in my life that I'm an expert at surrendering to. But when it comes to certain things like the fight inside of me, it's really challenging at times for me to surrender that fight. And what I mean by that fight is to take care of myself, to fight for myself, to fix it for myself. Because again, at a very young age, right, I was left alone to figure it out on my own. And my fight inside of me is what kept me alive. In fact, I was telling my best friend this morning, I was like, I'm like the cockroach. And it sounds probably weird to say that about myself, but I would probably be the one person who survived the apocalypse. Not because I want to, but because that's how fucking strong the fight inside of me is. And I'm tired of being the strong one. I'm ready for my soft girl era to come out and for me to be in my feminine and for me to be led and to not have to do that. And for that to happen, I had to find my sense of adventure again. I had to find my lightness where don't have to be so rigid and I don't have to take everything so seriously. And I'm not like that all the time, right? I'm just not. However, in challenging times or in meeting new people, I often end that way because that is the part of me that was ingrained. This is how I needed to be in order to stay safe. And I needed to let that version of me go. I needed to say, I let go of the version of me that is in survival. I have to let go. I am letting go. I do let go of the version of me that feels the need to fight to survive because I have proven to myself time and time and time again over the last few years, over the last 5 years, if not longer than that. But really, the last 2 years was trial by fire on my nomad journey. Legit trial by fire. Like you're going to walk through the flames for 2 years and you're going to come out a completely different person. And I'm not even all the way out of it. And I can already tell you I'm going to be a different person. And I'm just being purified in a way that I can't even articulate yet because I'm not completely on the other side of it. But I have so much faith and trust in myself. And I've proven that over and over and over again. So the only thing left is to let go. I'm kind of getting choked up and emotional, but it's to let go of the survival in me, to let go of the fighter, so that the soft curl era, the fun, adventurous, lighthearted version of me can step forward and start to run through my blood and beam from my being. Because doesn't that sound amazing? So anyway, if you're following along on this journey that I have been on with this 40 days of rewiring my brain, like this has been the most intense 40 days yet, and I'm only on day 17 as I record this. I don't, I can guarantee you this is going to be the most transformational 40 days I have done to date. And I am excited to see who I become on the other side of it. I am excited. And this is the type of commitment to self and willingness to face the truth of what I am and who I am and what I've been repressing, and just really face myself in a way that needed to happen. I wish this for every single person, and I say that with compassion and grace, because it is not easy. And at times I don't think it's worth it. But then I get through it and I go, oh, oh, oh yeah, it was definitely worth it. So anyway, I love you guys. Thank you for always for commenting and letting me know how much you resonate with these stories and how much they've helped you. I really appreciate the support. And I will see you in the next episode.
Hey, thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by JohannaBurkhardt.com, where it's time to defy the limits of your mind and step into your multidimensional mastery. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.